All right. What do we think about the angle? It's gonna move a little bit anyway if there's any wind, so I'm not too worried about it. So, okay. Today is the 12th of December, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, a clothing company that is so much more than just a clothing company. We are called In the Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. We discuss the skeletal system of the human body. The body is not about the fat content. It's not about the muscle mass. It's about its foundational skeletal system. All the muscles do is operate the skeletal system. They pivot it and hinge it and rotate it. And if the skeletal system is just allowed, which is our key word at In the Image Clothing Company, to just be in its natural only working position, then it'll just do that. We don't have to dress the muscles. You won't ever get sore and have to stretch, because I don't stretch. I'm no different, but I do the things that are required to allow my body to work. Okay, so 2 prerequisites to allow that to have a chance to happen, and then we get into depth. Lace your shoes with the technique that we use, which you'll find where you find In the Image Clothing Company. Included with the technique is just to tie them evenly over toward the inside. And that's just going to allow your foot to be unaltered. You could sit down on something with your feet hanging, right? Just dangling your feet, and it'll be there. You'll feel no pull or push on your feet or ankles. It just does not alter them. We don't need to have heels on our shoes. That will alter the body entirely as well. But the lacing, what we can address without changing the shoes you wear, that's what will allow that to happen. So, because what I'm saying with that is if you do have an unnaturally shaped shoe for the shape of your foot, or it's stretchy, or like I was saying, elevated, that's going to change your body's workings all the way up because your feet are your foundation. But yes, that is our shoelacing technique, first prerequisite. The second one is to remove all tags from everything. Tags within clothing are causing a gap wherever they're placed, only in that location. Plus, they're slippery. If they're synthetic and the body can't predict slippery, it can't stabilize against slippery, and so it's altering the body. So even within the tongues of the shoes, I know that sometimes it's very hard to get those out because they really heat shrink them on there. But sometimes what I've done is take scissors and cut slits into the tag. You just don't want it slippery so that you can dorsiflex your foot. Okay, so yeah, clothing on everybody, man or woman, tall or short, any age, any amount of fat or muscle on your body. About the skeletal system, clothing needs to sit to where the pants are entirely above the hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear for the pants. The tops, shirts, right? Any kind of top, those top seams of the shoulders need to sit behind that little bone that is actually the other end of your collarbone. And that's what's going to allow your shoulders to be in their position, allowing your rib cage to open and just be normal. And then those edge seams right at the very edges of your shoulders, ideally, right? So, meaning, just get it close, because unless you get a tailor to really get your clothing perfect, if you're just buying small, medium, large, then sometimes it's not exactly perfectly right there, but just very close to right at the edge of your shoulders where it needs to be. So, yeah, yes. Let's get into this. We talk about shoes all the time, and I talk about rotations within the body, and okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about the knees. Can you tell that I wasn't quite sure what this video even was when I started it? I'm gonna talk about the knees, because here's the thing. We need to be able to fully extend our knees. I did a video today, actually, titled How Clothing Affects Joint Extensions. And I have discussed how the body just has ranges of motion, and it needs to be able to get all the way to them, because it naturally would, unless something external was restricting it. The body will work unless it couldn't. There'd be no reason it wouldn't. And so that reason could be anything. But but it's almost always clothing. It's almost always external things. We also do discuss the radius or the rounding within our hands. We live in a modern, flat 2024 man-made world that's just unnatural. So incorporating things that are round is something we also do discuss all the time. Something with texture for the feet, and then, yes, for the hands, accommodating their natural openness for the shoulders, because the shoulders are essentially the hands. Now, when it comes to the knee, I'm going to focus mostly on the right knee. I've talked about this before, where 85%, give or take, of the population of the earth, human beings, are right-handed. And there's reasons to that, and we could get into why that is, but even if you aren't right-handed, if you're left-hand dominant, clothing designs are still right-handed. Zippers are generally right-handed. Sometimes they're left-handed zippers for reasons I could also discuss, but zippers are a lot of times right-handed. The dreaded collar seam, which we have 3 videos up until today's date about for In The Image Clothing Company, that seam in the shirt of t-shirts is essentially right-handed because of the position to put your body into. There's things within clothing that is just right-handed, and so the right knee, if you are tying your shoes unevenly, I was one of those people until I was 24 years old. Tying your shoes just like a simple knot, and then you go to the other shoe and just tie the same simple knot, you're actually twisting your entire body. And we have so much content about that for In The Image Clothing Company. That is the foundation of the, what you could call, universal patterning that people get into that comes up through the entire body. They do clothing designs like things, the dreaded collar seam is one of them, that they actually place into clothing to play into the patterning that the feet are putting the rest of the body in, because our bodies have to stay centered and gravity just pulls us straight. We have the sternum, the spine, and the nose being our center, but if you're living an entire life with ropes on your ankles, which is all shoelacing is, twisting your body, really just that one foot is just being pulled out, but then the body's in a twist, then this patterning won't feel very comfortable within centered clothing. So they do clothing designs to play into the patterning of shoelaces, the way that people are commonly tying their shoelaces is what I mean, unevenly. So that's why the prerequisite is what it is. Now, when it comes to joint extensions, the right knee almost can't ever get fully extended within people unless they're pretty intentional about their life, and I'm one of those people. I'm just saying that because I'm speaking out of experience. Your knee has what's called a screw home mechanism, where the knee is basically a pretty simple, just straightforward hinge joint. This is pretty much all it does, except when it gets to the end, it rotates a little bit. And I've shown, right, when you're going to fully extend, and even just in a natural walking gait, which I've shown within videos, where when you walk, you really use the outside of your foot like this, and that's how the arch grips within the feet. But the lower leg plays into that same like rotation. When you get fully extended, this lower leg will rotate just a little bit to lock the knee in. If you're standing and because here's the thing, it's not really just when you're standing, because you don't want to stand with your knees locked. You don't. What that'll do is put a lot of pressure on the joint of the knee, but also, right, just because it's directly stacked, but then also muscles have to be within, like if we look at the bicep, muscles have to be a little bit into their range of motion to be able to activate. If it's fully extended, you can't lift. If you lay your arm flat on a table with something in your hand and try to lift it from straight, it's going to be very hard. But if you start out with just like a little bit of a bend, it's going to be a lot easier because you're into the range of motion. So keeping a range of motion, keeping into a little bit of a bend within the knee to allow your hamstrings to just stay activated and just your whole body working as a whole when you stand is how you should be standing, how the body would naturally stand. So you don't want to be locking your knees out standing. But in a walk, when you walk, it's important to be able to fully extend your knee through each step. Otherwise, it's like what I was discussing within the video I just made today on the ranges of motion. If any range of motion is restricted within anything in the body, then something else and many things have to compensate, because the body just has to continue to work as a whole. I understand it's a little bit windy, that's why I'm kind of talking a little bit louder when I can tell there's more wind. And the camera shifts, that's fine. So the knee needs to be able to fully extend. It needs to just be able to get there. And if you're not tying your shoes toward the inside, then your knee can't fully extend. Because in order for your knee to get all the way to its end range of motion, you need your ankle to be neutral. And in order for your ankle to be neutral, your feet arches have to be unrestricted. So hence our shoelacing technique. So having those arches and gripping inward allows that neutral ankle. And then at that point, because what happens is, since this lower leg, for that whole screw home mechanism at the end of the very end range of motion, right? It hinges out straight, and then as it gets to the very end, it kind of like turns and locks into place just a little bit down here. And when that's happening, what really is happening is your foot is like on the outside of it as that natural arch is shaped. And so if that's not allowed to happen because of anything within shoelaces, then your knee is going to not be able to fully extend. And that's from the bottom end. We'll get into what's happening at the waistline coming down to your knee as well. So what's happening with the right side is, if that's the side you're tying your shoes toward, please don't, for the sake of your body. You will never have a naturally functioning body. And again, natural isn't some choice. I just mean the only way the body actually works is the way that it was naturally designed to work. We can't get it to do anything else besides what it does. That will never happen. Never, never. If you are tying your shoes unevenly through the entirety of your life, that could never happen. Never. No matter how many exercises you do, corrective things, never. If you go back into shoes tied unevenly, you're never going to fully extend your right knee. It just won't happen. It cannot. There's a physical rope around your ankle pulling it in an unnatural way. So really just putting the entire right side of the body into external rotation, as I discussed. So if you don't have the ability for your knee to fully extend and get into that screw home mechanism, what you can do actually is you can sit on the ground with your feet out and your leg flat on the ground. If you're not very flexible within your hamstrings, that's okay. The body's not really about flexibility at all. It just needs to function and be able to do what it needs to do. What I'm saying is, if you're sitting down and it's kind of hard to get your legs straight because your hamstrings being pulled on, put your hands behind you, sit on the ground to where your feet are flat out, legs are on the ground, and try to extend your knees while they're on the ground to the point where it's like you're lifting your feet off the ground with the rest of your legs there. I kind of want to demonstrate it, but I'll be so much farther back if I were to be trying to be in the frame. What I'm getting at is, it's going to be really hard for that right side to extend. You're going to feel like you can't lift your heels off the ground by just extending your knee all the way, because it's not able to. And the reason is, yes, because of that knot within your shoe. So you saw it hit me. It's crazy, because now when you're standing, we shouldn't, like I said, have our knees locked, but they should be able to. They should be able to get all the way from where they are now to locked, straight. Now they're locked, mine, that you can see. It should be able to happen. Otherwise, your body's going to sense that it's getting close to what it would call being in the patterning it's in, its end range of motion. But because this side's so much restricted, so much more than the left, if the left can just do its full screw home mechanism and the right can't, then wherever its end before it actually gets there is, right, the position that it's only allowed to get to, once it's getting close to that, it'll sense it and then like stop. And so if you can't fully extend one of your knees only, then everything traveling up in the whole chain of your body, and really down as well, but the reasoning why it's happening is probably, I mean it is, but that's, yeah, it's from your shoelace. So when it's traveling down, really that's where it's stemming from. But everything is getting affected and has to compensate. So now if you can't, like if you stand and you just like, if you're standing there putting your feet forward, your hips as even as you can if you are within patterning, and your shoulders as even as you can, and just bend one of your knees, you can't do that without rotating your pelvis. And so being within this patterning, this just happening no matter what, if your shoes are tied unevenly. It's sad. It's not in a bad way sad, it's heart, it pulls on my you know, because I know what people are going through. So yeah, your hips are going to be twisted just because your knee can't fully extend ever. And so every step you take, that's the patterning you've trained into and you're just continually in. Every time you try to stand, that's what's happening. Even sleeping in a bed, that's a big reason why people can't sleep flat on their back without a pillow. I say that we shouldn't sleep with pillows because you're trying to stand like this in daily life. You don't want to be sleeping like this with a pillow. You want to be sleeping with no pillow. Okay? That's how the human body works. It's not an opinion is what I mean. So, but if you can't fully extend one of your knees, meaning your pelvis will always be slightly rotated rather than being able to get even. Look at my knee, right? Straight versus bent, you know, I mean, the whole pelvis will go as well. Then when you're laying in a bed, everything's such in a twist that, like, just look at the position of my spine, it'll just feel more comfortable, even though it's not comfortable, but it'll feel like it's more accommodating to have a pillow and a twist rather than being even and neutral, right? So yeah, that's a lot of that is because you can't fully extend your right knee. Now, when I talk about internal rotation, that's all I talk about. When it comes to rotations, I only ever mention internal rotation and just making sure we can get internal rotation. At the feet and legs, internal rotation. Internal rotation at the whole body. That's something that's so chronically lacking in 2024 in most all humans because of what we talk about. So, yeah, flat things in the world will do that, and then all the things, discrepancies within clothing that we discuss will do that. So, if you're not allowed to, where was I? I guess just, yeah, being able to extend the knee. Oh, well, when we think about internal rotation, the lower part of the leg, in order to do that screw home mechanism, the lower part of the leg has to rotate inward. And trying to make sure I'm saying that right. But yes, it does. The lower part of the leg rotates like up all the way to the knee in at the end range of motion to lock the knee. So when I talk about internal rotation of the leg as a whole, I understand that at each joint there's things happening. There's the ankle, there's the knee, and then there's the hip. Before you get to the hip, you've got those things. But then even below the ankle, you've got everything that the foot's doing to grip that arch inward. But here's the thing, the arch grips inward. And so traveling up from the arch would be that inward rotating of the lower leg to the knee. But then once you get to the knee, the femur could be going external even though the lower leg is going internal. That really could happen. But when I talk about as far as the hips down, just focusing on internal rotation, it's about just with the natural healthy arch in the feet, good nails on the toes, also the fingers, right? For support, naturally we just need nails. That's their function, is to support the toes and the fingers. With a good naturally functioning arch, a neutral ankle allowing your foot to come in, even if your femur is like rotating out because of what's all happening within each joint, it's the focus on getting that arch to grip in. So when I'm discussing internal rotation and I just kind of say it as a whole when it comes to the hips down, that's what I mean. Because no matter what's happening in here, you can, you can write on your anatomy test in school that maybe even though the lower leg's rotating in order for that to happen, the femur is actually rotating out. But that's not the focus. It's what way is your foot gonna point, working as a whole from your hip all the way to your toes. That's what I am saying when I say internal rotation. So, in order for anything to happen with the foot going in a way that's actually happening, rather than like you're in this chronic patterning but you like try to put your foot in but you're not actually like internally rotating with the arch and neutral ankle of the foot and ankle, then in that position, in order to get there is what I mean, this tibia, the lower leg has to rotate in. And so if you're tying a knot that's just putting your foot outward, you're never going to straighten your knee at all. You just can't, because the lower leg has to rotate in, but that's just fighting a rope that's pushing your foot out, really just kind of collapsing the arch, which takes your foot out. So yeah, that right knee can be a source of a lot of things within the body, but it's not the cause. The shoelace causes the knee to then be the thing inhibiting other things because of those reasons. So that right knee, what I can say, I don't give exercises. I definitely do not give stretches because we don't ever need to stretch. We don't need to exercise either, or just to allow the body to function other than getting out of patterning. So I mention one-time releases quite often. That's not an exercise. That's bound up scar tissue, bound up muscles that need to be released after years of being trained into a certain position that's unnatural. So anything within the knee, all around the knee and in the joint, you've got this muscle here called a VMO, the vastus medialis obliquus. And that muscle, especially what I've noticed on my own body, gets really excessively worked because, again, the foot and ankle can't do their thing when you're walking with your foot on the right side being put outward and that arch can't grip inward. Then you're going to have a lot of muscles taking over that wouldn't do those things that they're having to compensate to do. So any release you can do, I mean, things within the glute medius and the hip flexor, because if your knee can't straighten out, then, well, your hip flexor can't. Otherwise, you'd be walking with your hip flexor straight and trying to have your knee bent, but now you're going to feel it over here. I say that because I'm feeling it here now. The knee has to straighten for the hip flexor to straighten. So if you have tight hip flexors, the knee, but it's not the knee's fault, it's the shoelace. So yeah, doing all you can to release anything that will allow the knee to extend fully. And that's why I mentioned the sitting on the ground. That's something that's beautiful because that's what I personally did. I sat on the ground like that, and ideally you should be able to, because I remember back when I would like work out years ago. I don't work out. I wouldn't recommend working out for any human. Physical exercise is doing natural functioning things, yes, but I don't mean like doing a workout for the sake of a workout. I would never recommend that. I really wouldn't. That might sound very weird, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Personal experience, I know the body. Check out In The Image Clothing Company content if you have a question on that. Yeah, but anyway, the point is the body just needs to be able to function, because if you're going to be doing workouts in these patternings, you're just further damaging, further ingraining the patterning, and the body is just taking a beating when you're trying to help it. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing a workout for the sake of working out anyway, even if your body's centered. Just live your life. That's the whole thing. We're just allowing the body to work. But I remember I saw people talking about like this workout you could do to get your quads strengthened, and especially like, yeah, the muscles that really fully extend the knee. And that's what they would say. This was years ago. They're like, sit on the ground and fully extend your knee and drop it back down, so that like, because really what's happening is you're kind of like pivoting on your calf muscle, so your heel's coming off the ground when you extend your knees and drop them back. So if you're sitting there, try to extend your knee and feel what's tight, and kind of like work through those muscles, just like with your own hands, you know, just kind of loosen up things that are just so chronically bound up just because they haven't been able to even get to the position that they have. But I'm not really telling you to do that, because I'm not trying to give exercises to do. I don't want anybody to hurt themselves. I'm just saying, if it's not able to extend, it needs to. If there's bound up things, they need to be released. That's all I'm saying. I'm not telling you to do it though, right? So yeah, I just want to be, you know, kind of careful about that, because I don't want anybody to potentially hurt themselves. I mean, it's your own body. You can do just, you know, it's really, really great to get in touch with our own bodies. It's our own bodies. But yes, that knee needs to be able to extend. And so if you can't get in with the foot, then you can't get in with the lower leg. And then you can't do the screw home mechanism. And then we can talk about anything traveling up. So it's shoelaces, man. It doesn't really get more simple than 2 prerequisites to really pretty much be almost all you need. Really, pretty much all you need. The shoelacing prerequisite, the tags prerequisite. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we talk about. We have so much more than that we discuss, but you just have to allow your body to work. And it's funny that we don't even think about shoelaces. We're like, I don't know, I mean, I'm just gonna put my shoes on, you know. You just tie a knot so that it doesn't come off your foot. It has to be evenly over toward the inside. It just has to. So yeah, that knee. And I mean, you just look at it. Knee injuries are almost always the right knee. Like I say, when I say we talk about so much more, I mean, there's things within pant stitching that really just places your body into a similar position. The collar seam, you know, imbalances within stuff if you haven't done modifications that I do and that I show. But it's almost always the right knee that gets injured. And that's why, because you can't have its full range of motion. And so the right side of the, if we're just talking about the leg alone, from the hip down, is just so inhibited from anywhere near a natural working, always. And you'll notice that if you look at your own legs, especially if you work out, it's so common for people's right side to be so much larger, even if they're very evenly training their body as far as like reps or sets or times that they're doing things. If their shoes are tied unevenly, their knee just can't hinge in a normal position. Their foot and ankle can't support their body in a normal position. And then their hips rotation is so altered, and the extension of everything on this side. I just want to focus on only the leg for this video, mostly, right? To keep it centered around the knee. Their quad will just get so much larger. Their hamstring will, because working any muscle in a position that is not designed to work the most efficiently is going to cause what's called hypertrophy. Bodybuilders, they train for hypertrophy, for size. And so what they do is they stress their muscles in an unnatural way in order to grow them larger. So that's why people's right sides of their calves, hamstrings, and quads are larger than their left. And that's why most all injuries of the ankle, of the knee, yeah, it happens to the right side of the foot. So that right knee needs to be able to screw home. It needs to be able to get all the way extended, just because that way it just has its range of motion. So then it can utilize it. And then the muscles are just pulling the bones in the position they'd naturally track in. Because that's all it is. So it's just about allowing the body to work. You don't need to know any anatomy of the body other than what would be required to know how to not restrict your body. Because if you have something happen to your body to where you would need like a surgery, I don't mean some chiropractic visit or something, because those things, they're only because of the things that we discussed that you're going to a chiropractor, unless something else has happened, like an actual event took place that was like something that's not common, like an injury. But like if you're gonna go get a surgery or something, the only reason you would need to know really the anatomy of the body is if you were to address something that has gone wrong. All you need to know, every human, unless there is something to address, is just how to not restrict your body's natural function. And then it will just do its natural function. So that's what we do here at In the Image Clothing Company. We give truth of what's really going on. And that's the knee for this video specific. Okay, so like I said, it is the 12th of December, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. We have three things here. We've got this, the main company, where we discuss the human body's anatomy. We discuss clothing and what it does to it and how to allow it to not restrict the body. I just wasn't sure how I was wording that with the way I approached it. And then we've got In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love the podcast. It's amazing. It is. That's me saying that. It is. And then we also have In the Image Clothing Company music, where it's going to get cool. So if you'd like to check out In the Image Clothing Company music, you can do that. Everything we do is centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ being the truth of all things. Within the podcast, I'm going to get into as much as I can within the gospel of Jesus Christ, giving a lot of information and discussions on it, and it's going to be so awesome for me to learn more and to share the gospel with everybody that I could possibly have it come in contact with. It's great. So yeah, we will have clothing available just to allow the body to work, made out of 100% natural materials, sitting evenly, sitting where I discussed clothing needs to, and yeah, there we go, bro. I don't know, I got like loosened up in the last part of this video. Not that I was tense in any other part of it, I just yeah, so there we go. The knee. If you have problems with your knee, don't address your knee. That's what we talk about. If you have a problem within something within your body, it's not that part of the body that's causing it unless an injury happened to it. Like if you're playing sports, or if you fell and you actually had a impact to your knee physically, something else hit your knee, then yeah, you hit your knee. Or like you fall on it and, you know, hurt your patella, which is your kneecap or whatever. But if you just have knee pain, it is not your knee. It's because it can't track normally and straight, or because the screw home mechanism, like I'm saying, or because the range of motion in some other way is restricted. I was saying I mentioned pants. Yeah, pants, just I said where they need to sit, because if they're any lower in the front at all, then that's going to just shorten the natural range of motion, meaning just the only way the knee works, because the hips are altered. I was mentioning, right, the shoelaces are that end of the knee coming up, the hips are this end of the knee going down, and the knee's just going to hinge with that little screw home at the end. It just needs to be allowed to. Okay, all right, thank you. Oh, it didn't stop. The reason I say that, you might have seen me do that in other videos. If you have, it's because I don't know if that means I'm not fully saying something that needs to be said. Right? So I have a video for In the Image Clothing Company titled How Pant Cuffs Affect Body Mechanics, and that will also affect your knee. Anything that's going to affect the range of motion within your ankle, the natural dorsiflexion or plantar flexion, and then the natural position of your hip or the rotations within it will affect your knee. So the big thing really though is that screw home mechanism, which yeah, it just needs to be able to get fully straight, because what's happening a lot of times, yeah, we're gonna mention this as well. People, if you're standing within external rotation, your feet are out, your arches are collapsed, your shoulders will then follow. You don't really cut your body in half to have good internal rotation up here with external rotation down there. So if your arches are collapsed, then your feet will go out, and everything that I discuss, right, within other videos for In the Image Clothing Company. The point that I'm mentioning is so many people will be standing with their feet collapsed and out, so their knees are pretty much straight. But if you're standing and it's common for you to feel as though your knees are locked out when you stand, your right knee never actually locks out. So not only are you like
let's say you're pretty well natural and activated, right? That slight bend in the knee to allow activation within the muscles so that they're slightly into the range of motion, like I was saying. Let's say you're pretty well close to that, yet your shoes are still tied unevenly. You wouldn't notice as much, and it wouldn't be quite as much of an effect on the knees. But if you're standing with collapsed arches, external rotation, which is just what most people do, being 2024, clothing designs, the technology we have, what it's doing to our bodies, and the way that the world's structured, that's just kind of how it is. And if you're not very intentional, heels on the shoes, lots of things that can cause that. That's what almost everybody is in, is external rotation, which is just half of the rotation that we have, external, internal. But internal rotation is something you actually have to be very intentional about in modern 2024 to even be able to have tags, all the things that could affect that. If you're standing with collapsed arches because you are in external rotation in the ways that that happens, what will happen is you're going to be standing with your knees pretty well locked out, but since that right knee can't, now since you're just already pretty much full locked, the discrepancy is going to be so much greater and more noticeable because, like, let's say the left knee is just entirely locked for some of the time when you're standing, the right just can never get there. As opposed to, like I'm saying, if you're standing pretty well activated still, then there's at least a slight bend in both. So, yeah, the knees, like I've said quite a few times within this, they should never be fully locked when you stand. They shouldn't. That's just going to cause a lot of damage to the cartilage between the bones, and yeah, it's just deactivating your muscles is really what it's doing, and putting the emphasis on the bones rather than the range of motion, allowing the muscles to work. So anyway, the knees, that's what we're gonna say for the knees, how clothing affects the knees. Yeah, because there really is a slight outward bow in the legs, whether you're a male or a female or whatever, there really is. And so, because of the arch gripping onto the outside of the foot and that neutral ankle. So what I'm saying with that is you can kind of take a look in the mirror at your own knees and stand like evenly, or like what's quote unquote normal to you at the time, and you can see your right knee is probably more like straight. The left knee has a better potential to be able to be more naturally bowed. Gosh, yeah, there's a lot that we could get into, but yes, because it really is, it's because of the arch of the foot. If the arch is there, it kind of does, like if I'm standing with my feet straight, but then I collapse my arches, look at this knees. I know you can't quite see, like you can see to here, but my knees are more straight. But when you go onto the outsides of your feet by activating naturally your gripped arches, that's what will kind of push your knees out, tucking your pelvis, activating your core, and so there's that natural little bit of outwardness that would just always be there. And so that's one thing you can look at to see what I'm discussing and notice it within your own legs, that the right side won't have as much of an outward natural curvature to it. I mean, the bones themselves have outward curvatures to them, slightly. That's just how the bones are shaped. So, and then in addition to that is the arches pulling like they do. Okay, so the knees. I want to make sure that I say all that I need to on the knees for this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. This is not the podcast. For this video of In the Image Clothing Company, though, yes. Yeah, like to stand on your one foot, it needs to be bowed a little bit. So, it's the shoes. Make sure they're laced correct, though. Just tying them evenly won't allow the arch to be there if the laces are collapsing your arches. So now you could have your feet in, but your knees are taking a beating because certain muscles are not allowed to fully activate because of what the arches do. So, man, I just feel like there's more to say about the knees. So, okay, we will, but let's keep talking about it. When you're wearing shorts, don't let your shorts touch the top of your calf. When you're wearing shorts, keep them above your knees, or just like right at your knee. If it touches the top of your calf, then as you're walking, you're going to be hitting the rear of the shorts with your calf, and it's going to change how much your knee bends, and that's something you don't want. When you're wearing full-length pants, I mean, sensory activation wise within the muscles of the body, it's already just touching against the whole sides of your legs as it goes down, and so they're like, oh, it's there. But when you're walking in shorts and they're just barely longer than your knees, then you're walking normal until that short material touches the rear of your calf, and then it's just going to change your knee workings quite a bit. So, screw home mechanism. Also, if your shoulders can't elevate because you're wearing like an oversized shirt, for example, your knee can't fully extend because, well, your shoulders, your arms, your elbows won't fully extend. The body works as a whole. You have to get to where everything's like in line, and it can't be in line down here. So it's just not the way that the body actually connects. So, okay, I feel like there's more to say. On the knees. The knees. It's just so common for people to get injuries to their knee. And it's not their knee. It's not their knee. It is not. It's because something else is not working correct. So, well, I mentioned heels on the shoes, but if you have a heel on your shoe, you will never be able to even straighten your knee at all. You have to have your feet flat on the ground. That's the way they're designed to work. That's the only way they will work. Because if you have a heel, then really what's going to happen is, I've shown this, I actually made a video titled How Heels on Shoes Affect Body Mechanics. Because if you have a heel in your shoe, it's either going to just like push you forward like this, or what's going to happen is, since there's a heel, everything's going to have to bend just to accommodate, to keep you above your own center of gravity. And so now your knees, yeah, heels, that's what I was missing. That's why I wasn't allowed to cut this yet. Your heels have to be, I mean, the shoe on the front has to be the same height as it is at your heel. Toes and heels, same height. It has to. Because, I mean, I wore boots with an inch heel for somewhere between 3 and 4 years, and it was so damaging to my body. That's what got me into a lot of these patternings in such depth. And I was tying shoes incorrect in the same time anyway, and they were laced wrong as well. But yeah, because if there's a heel there, then your knee is never going to even be able to get close to straight at all. So then the whole screw home mechanism can't even get close to where it would even be actually able to work. And so now a whole function of your knee is not even allowed to happen ever because you have a heel on your shoe. So that's huge. Man, I'm so grateful that I listened rather than like trying to like, I wanted to stop. I feel like we're done, you know? No, that's awesome. Yeah, you have to have your feet flat on the ground. You have to. Have to. If you look up shoes, it's not a specific kind of shoe, but just if you look up zero drop, meaning it doesn't drop from the heel to the toe, that's how you're going to get flat. I'd say barefoot shoes are the ideal for every human. It's just very close to as if you were wearing no shoes, which is the way that your feet are actually going to operate the best if there were no shoes on them at all. So yeah, do not put heels under your feet. I know that women wear heels for fashion. I know that a lot of men wear work boots, but I don't care. I don't mean that mean, but you're going to be in pain no matter what. I mean, you have the slightest bit of heel on your shoe that's higher than your toes, you're going to be in pain no matter what. So I don't care what your occupation is. If you have any possible chance to get your hands on like work boots that don't have a heel, do it. Like, make that your focus, because you're at work, you're doing hard physical labor with a heel on, your entire body is going to be in shambles is the word that I want to use, even though that's not quite how you would use that word. It's going to be terrible. And women, yeah. Well, because when we're talking about a walk, we're talking about the gait cycle of the body, which just means the way the body naturally walks. The screw home mechanism, it happens during the gait. It's not like some hard lockout that happens at the knee each step, but it just needs to be able to get fully extended. And when you watch women walk in heels, like you picture like a pretty high heel, their hips will shift. They'll be walking kind of like this. And I don't mean to like put an image on it, but you know, just so you can kind of tell what I'm saying. Like their hips will shift back and forth. And what that means, this is no mean thing, but it's just the truth of the mechanics of the way the body connects. It means that they have weak hips. They don't need to train their hips. They're just putting them into an unnatural position. That's all that's happening. Because if you're not able to extend your knees, because when you're standing in heels, you're going to have a bend in your knees. Women's calves get so sore wearing heels. Well, yeah, of course, of course. I understand is what I mean, yes. You're standing in heels, your calves are shortened the whole time. So your pelvis is also compensating, and so your glute medius that needs your heel on the ground to contract, which really, in a sense, kind of straightens your knee as well, tucks your pelvis, that muscle is just not even able to even possibly think about working normal at all if your feet are that off the ground. And so now that muscle specifically, there's other muscles that do stabilize the hips, but the glute medius is huge. If it's not even allowed to work at all because of the heel on your high heels, in women's high heels case, right? Or just anything, even work boots, no matter how high it is, but the degree just gets greater the higher the heel you get, then your hips are just not stabilized. And so now you're just walking and they're shifting. And that's really just moving your whole spine, putting torsion on your knees, right? The point is your knees have to be able to extend. And if you stand on your toes with your knees bent and then you extend your knees, look, my body doesn't change height, but my knees are really quite bent. My toes are off, my heel is off the ground, I'm on my toes, but look, my shoulder won't change height, and I'll straighten my knees because I'm allowing my heels to come down. See that? You have to be able to fully straighten your knees. There's a whole function at the end range called the screw home mechanism. And so that's just the entire time a woman is wearing high heels, in that time, her knees are being forced to not even have an entire function that they do. So, yes, take care of your knees. I'm going to mention a little bit of personal experience. When I was a teenager, I did so much parkour, is the word, but really I just did flips. Like outside, I do front flips, side flips, back flips, Webster's, gainers. So, I did a lot of impact on my knees, and I did that within tying shoes unevenly, and they were probably all laced just differently. Maybe some were laced pretty well close to correct, but I don't think I ever had a pair of shoes ever that was actually laced correct from the factory, meaning our technique, the only thing that does not alter your feet. So I damaged my knees really bad in that time, and I had physical therapy that I was going to for quite a while. They'd put like the tape on my knees and, you know, ice and heat, and they'd do like the scraping, which, I mean, I'm appreciative for them helping, but now that I know what I know, that stuff wasn't necessary. It didn't actually fix anything. It didn't help me. It relieved some pain in some ways, but I spent thousands of dollars and went to multiple visits for, I think, a couple months, maybe even 3 months. And yeah, no, it didn't, I mean, because now I can sit in a full deep squat and just have range of motion within my knees because I just allow them to have their full range of motion. I allow them to track straight and just work from the feet and ankles and from the hips. I didn't address my knees, other than, like I'm saying, if there's muscles that are tense that need to be released. So, okay, it's really cool. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay, thank you. I love this. Because I was planning on just kind of discussing the screw home mechanism and relating it with the shoelace, but no, I haven't done a video on the knees yet for In the Image Clothing Company, so that is this, and I've covered it. I mean, there really is always more that I could add to these videos, because you can mention anything within anything that is playing into what you're talking about commonly. That really is, you know, within just about every person's case in 2024. But so meaning, like, there's definitely more I could say that is affecting the knees, and not just something that could, but that is like commonly and almost in every case. But no, this is good. The point is really, like I'm saying, just allow them to work, and it doesn't come from the knee. It comes from the other, both ends of the knee. Okay, so gosh, I just feel like I'm not supposed to quite stop this yet, and I'm not sure why. And so I'm going to listen, because I put so much more information in after I was going to stop it the first time. So, man, I guess another thing I can say is, don't put stretchy shoelaces into your shoes. Don't have any kind of stretch within your laces, because then your arches are going to try to activate, and it's unpredictable when they're stretched. And so then your knees, meaning muscles like the VMO and all the quads and everything that plays into the knee, is going to like tense up more to try to stabilize the knee, because the foot feels unstable, because stretch, unpredictable. And it's so common nowadays for shoelaces to be stretchy, to have some sort of stretch or just excess give. I'm using, what's in these shoes right now is paracord, parachute cord, like that really high tensile strength, small cording. That's what I'm using for shoelaces. It has no give at all. And I love that, because that's just, it's very good for the body to be able to just completely predict everything with no stretch and things. That's the ideal. There's no stretch in nature, at least very, very, very little. If you could find something, then whatever. But I have a whole video actually titled stretchy clothing affects body mechanics. And so, yeah, anything that's causing the hips to feel unstable or the knees to feel unstable is going to affect the knee being right in between them. So things like a stretchy waistline, stretchy belt, same thing. If your hips can't quite activate normal, then your knee is going to try to take over the stabilization between its, you know, the things at its ends, the knee, the hips and the feet. So yeah, I did a video one time as well titled I titled it "The Problem with Specialists," and that's when I discussed the knee. Really, pretty much one of the only times that I've even talked about the knee within content, besides in this video specifically for the knee, because I mentioned, yeah, it's not the knee's fault that it's having pain, but it's so common. And it's also, okay, well, this is the other thing. I mean, if you're sitting at somewhere between somewhere around a 90-degree bend in the knees and the hips, then your knee is just constantly in a bend. So you're sitting in a classroom at school with your knee constantly halfway bent, and, you know, with weight on the hamstring, deactivating this big muscle that feeds into the function of the knee. And all the things that I say within the Truth Behind series for In the Image Clothing Company, I have a video titled The Truth Behind Sitting. And I just did a video here today, before this, titled The Truth Behind Tables, which is similar to just, you know, if you are sitting at a table, then it's the same as just sitting in anything, as long as it's the same height. So if you're spending a lot of time with your knee in that position, then it's just halfway into its range of motion, and that's so weird for it to be. It'd be like me holding my arm like this all day. Not quite the same, but as far as the bend, it's just, I mean, that's such a similar bend to the knee sitting, and then it's going to have a hard time straightening out. It's going to have a hard time just working normal, and it's going to be not used to any other range of motion if that's its most common one. If you're going to have it be bent 90 degrees sitting, then it's going to have pain until it gets allowed to just be like worked back into its full range of motion. So yeah, we just have to allow our knees to just be what they are, being, like I said, mostly just a simple hinge. So yeah, oh man, shoot. It could just keep going. Yeah, you want your laces to stop at your ankle. Don't lace your shoes higher than right where your ankle flexes, dorsiflexes, or else then all the muscles that are stabilizing your knee from down there are being inhibited, and so your knee is going to be trying to do all that it can when it's making up for work that other things aren't doing that they naturally would. So that's huge as well. Wow. All right, just allow the knees to work. They need to. Yes. Okay, I guess that's all.
This video, man, it just keeps going. I'm saying more things, and they're all very important for people to know if you could know them.
So yeah. Yeah. Wow. Let the knees work, man. Because your knees are something that is so crucial for anything else to work. Because if your knees can't work, then all that range of motion there is just gone, and now you have your hips being altered. Because the thing with the knee, it is strange, it's just a hinge, pretty simple, but you've got all your quads going in and connecting at your knee joint, you've got your hamstrings going in and connecting at your knee joint, and you've got your calves going in and connecting at your knee joint, and so you've got so many muscles coming at different angles to the knee that if your knee wasn't allowed to hinge, your hip doesn't just get affected because it's a little bit altered, but really all the muscles that are going to stabilize your hips, well, because even your hip flexors go down into your knee, even these inner adductors go down into the knee joint. So your hip won't be able to be stable if your knee, to the best of your ability, if you've got your own situation where your knee just really has something you can't really do much more than what you're doing about, that's okay. But what we can do, we got to do all that we can to allow the knee to track straight, because the hip has to be stabilized or else the spine's out of whack. And all those muscles are just stabilizing the hip, but they can't work without both ends of the insertions. Like your hamstring can't do anything to stabilize your hip if it doesn't have an insertion on the other end of it. And same with every one of the muscles that plays into anything that goes to the knee. So yeah, for the sake of your hip, because that's for the sake of your spine, which is your shoulders, which is your whole body. I mean, it just doesn't stop. The body works as a whole. Unless there's something you really pretty much don't have anything you can do any further than you've done to address something within your body, then we just have to do everything we possibly can to allow it to work. It's the only thing we've got. So, wow. I am shocked at how this video turned out for the knees. That's great. That's awesome. So much information within this. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm shocked. You can tell. Okay, so that's the knees. Just allow them to be what they are. When you're on your feet, you're on the outsides of them. If you're going to do them naturally, if you're going to use them naturally. Anytime you're using the insides of your feet, so much torsion, not torsion, so much bad angling being put on your knees, and it's not going to track straight if your arches are collapsed. You have to let your arches be what they are naturally. You have to. Or else, no matter how much range of motion and bend you have within your knee, you're going to be doing it out of a incorrect position because of the collapsed arch. And so now it's just grinding away at the knee, each bend, even if it's just a slight bend within a walking gait. But then the deeper you get, it's just, yeah, it's just grinding away at that knee. So, yeah. Adductors, man. Adductors. The muscles that pull your legs inward. This side, again, the right side that's being probably tied into external rotation, that adductor is doing so much work to try to pull that side of the leg in that alone is pulling on your knee. So you need to allow even strength in your adductors. You can try this for yourself. If you feel this muscle on the inside of your leg, your right one's probably a lot larger, physically actually larger, because it's just doing more work than it needs to. So it's getting bigger, hypertrophy. So they need to be able to grip inward evenly. And yeah, people's right knees are just getting blown out because that stemming from the arch is just, there's no stabilization for that knee. So, shoot. It's not bad when I say that, but I just feel like there's more to say. I don't care if this video is a 3-hour video, that's fine, but I'm trying to just make sure that I am saying all that I need to. If you're kneeling down though, like you're gonna like kneel down to do something, and you're almost certainly going to kneel with your left knee because that's just the position that you'd be in because of patterning. It's not because you're right-handed, because in order to actually do things with your right hand, yeah, it just doesn't matter. You're going to be kneeling and putting your right knee onto the ground. So if you ever kneel just with one knee down, like into a lunge, or sorry, your left knee will be the one placed onto the ground. Anyway, you're bending into the pants, and so the right knee area of the pants gets so much more stretched than the left. And then now when you walk, like what I was saying about shorts touching the rear of the top of your calf, when you walk, your knee's going to like go to find the pants each step, and they're going to be more stretched on that right side because that's the side that gets bent more because it can't fully straighten. There's also other things like the stitch within jeans that's uneven and pushes this side forward. So, wow, man, yes. And then if you're using things with your right hand and you have your hand on your knee, you're stretching out the material of your pants, and so then when you're standing, see, because that's the thing, is everything plays into the other things we do. If you're using things with your hand and resting your hand on your knee, stretching out the material, or this is just the one that's going to bend more because of like reasons like the stitching and things, then that's going to just play into the same thing that tying your shoe unevenly is going to do. But also what I'm saying is, yeah, that's just going to stretch your pants more. And so now when you stand and you're not able to fully extend your right knee to do that screw home mechanism, you're sensing the pants, because I can see it now. I can look down, and just what I did just there, I actually got these pants a couple days ago, used. I can see this right pant leg has more room in the front of it from my kneecap to the pant than it does on this side. So when I'm standing, if I'm going to be sensing nervous system wise my kneecaps touching something, my right knee has to come forward more, bend more in order to touch the pants than the left one. So if I'm standing here and I'm just kind of like, allowing my legs to touch my pants, my right knee is going to bend more than my left to even allow that to happen. So it gets so deep, it gets so real. That's the thing, is some of this stuff really seems so small. Some of this stuff is so small, but it's affecting the body. And then you're doing it every day. Like, you wear pants every day. And if they're always like that, then they're always training that patterning. You wear shoelaces every day. If they're always tied unevenly, they're always training the patterning. It's about the little things over time. It's like eroding mountains or whatever, when the weather, the water runs down and creates a canyon. It's the little things over time. So something like this, where that's not nitpicky, that's a patterning for life if it's happening every single day. So no matter how small the things are, and that's what In The Image Clothing Company is, right? It's always the little things are the biggest. So yes, every single day the pants, if they are uneven, they're going to be the same type of uneven if you're in the same patterning, and then it's going to reinforce the same patterning deeper every day. Little things over time, deeper, deeper, deeper. So we can get out of these patternings. We can get back to our center. And I'm, if you will, living proof of that. So again, that's why I am the one who founded this company, if that is the way I could word that. All right, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I want to express, actually, before I wrap this up, my gratitude for this video. I have very few videos as far as like main clothing company area videos that are this long. We have podcast episodes that are long and things like that, but I think it's just, you can tell the shock that I have, that the knees, because they really are quite a simple hinge, they ended up being something that had a video this long, and I wasn't redundant through it. I mean, it's just, there's more things that I was saying as it went. So yeah, anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you.